This is Ellen Valentine with Leatherwork School. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk to you today about how to adapt gusset patterns for machine stitching. Many of you have patterns from a variety of different books, or you've created your own patterns, but you need to make sure that if you're going to use the sewing machine, you've got the right kind of gussets for machine stitching. So let me give you an example. If you look at the book, this is the top handle bag. The top handle bag was specifically designed for hand stitching. And if you look at the gussets carefully, you can see that the gusset sits very close to the edge of the bag. There's simply not enough room for your feet on your sewing machine, your walking feet, to actually manipulate around these corners. So you need to change the gusset pattern on a bag like this or any other patterns that you have, and I want to talk to you about how to do that. The first thing is that the bag needs to have a gusset that's large enough for the machine to manipulate around. Even if you've got a sewing machine that has a cylinder arm, you still need to have room to adapt. Look at this bag. This is a very small, very tight corner, and even if you adapted this pattern, it would be very, very difficult for a sewing machine to get in this tight curve, even with a cylinder arm. So the first thing is you need to have a pattern and a project where your gusset is wide enough to be able to accommodate actually manipulating in here while you are sewing on the machine. So now let's talk about manipulating the pattern. We're going to go to the bulletin board here, and I'm going to show you an example of what you need to do to actually modify your pattern so that they will work well. The gusset patterns will work well with a sewing machine. So let's go ahead and move to the bulletin board. Here we are at the bulletin board, and first I want to show you, this is the actual pattern of the top handle in the book. This is the pattern from the book. The first thing I want to make sure you remember is that the dashed line that you see here is the length of that stitching line is exactly the same as the length of the body on your pattern. So you really need to make sure that no matter what adaptations you're doing or how you are changing your gusset pattern, you still need to make your stitching line exactly equal to the body pattern on your bag. So this is what we're starting with. As I mentioned, this is probably not going to work very well on your sewing machine. You need to insert a dart into your gusset. You need to insert a dart. So let's talk about that. The first thing you need to do is you need to modify your pattern. You need to modify your pattern by inserting a dart. And that's kind of a sewing terminology, but you're inserting a little wedge in here that actually allows you to insert some space. We've also got two other triangles here that are going to actually be overlapped. They're going to be overlapped in your construction. And then we're going to have a stitching line that's going to equal that, plus that, plus that. So these green triangles and the white triangles are actually hidden during construction. The white triangle goes away and the green triangle sits behind the blue triangle. So we've got an altered stitching length of our stitching line. So now let me show you how you actually create this. You're going to cut this pattern out. You're actually going to skive both of these triangles here. This one you're going to skive the leather side. This one you're going to skive the flesh side, and then you're going to put the gusset together. So let's go ahead back to the main camera here and let me show you. Here we go. We've skived this on the leather side. We've skived this triangle actually on the flesh side. And then we can actually unite these together to create our dart. So there we have it. We've got a very nice curve here. We've now suddenly got plenty of room for our sewing machine to manipulate around this curve. We've also got this skived out so it's nice and thin. It's actually a single thickness still, even though we've got two pieces of leather that are overlapping. But suddenly we've got lots of room in here to manipulate our sewing machine. So that's what a darted gusset looks like. Now, this is just the outer leather. You would actually do exactly the same thing on your lining leather and marry, or it would actually fold around also your lining leather directly behind your outer leather. So there we have it, our gusset. We've got things nice and skived, nice and tight in here. I've made this a little bit larger than you probably would make it in reality because I wanted you to be able to see this. But once you've got it made and stitched on your bag, it's hardly noticeable. It's a hardly noticeable addition that's very, very functional. So now I want to tell you the next step you need to take on your gusset, because once I've made that dart, it's actually not going to be big enough. Once I've got this sewn in here, you see it's shorter because I've dropped things down to create that dart. So we need to adapt our pattern to accommodate that full stitching line. So let's go back to the bulletin board. So we started with our triangles. We overlapped our triangles to create that gusset. The next thing we need to do is we need to add some space to the top of our gusset. We need to add some space up here, and we need to note how long is our stitching line on our bag body. In this particular bag, the stitching line is about 20 inches. And if you work in metric, it doesn't matter, just listen along with me. It's about 20 inches is my total stitching line of my bag body. When I made these adjustments, the stitching line actually fell down to 17 inches because I lost this area and I lost this area in my adjustments. So I need to add that space back in. We need to add that length back into the stitching line. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to add some space at the top. So the pink area represents what we've added, and you're going to look at and calculate the length of that stitching line all the way to there, plus this length from here to here, and now I have the correct measurement that will accommodate both the dart and the entire length of the bag body. So that's what you need to do to modify your patterns, to adapt your patterns for sewing machine use. There are a variety of different ways that you can adapt your patterns. This is just one way to incorporate a dart in each corner. You could also change it to a semi-welted gusset, which is very similar to what we have in the N-shaped bag in the pattern in the book. So if I were to recap in the book, the clutch pattern is probably too small to use on your machine. You need to focus on hand stitching that project, at least the gusset portion of that project. The N-shaped bag is ready for machine stitching. The T-bottom tote will work great on a sewing machine, but both the top handle and the round handle patterns, the gussets on those will need to be adapted in the manner in which I just explained. If you have patterns from other makers or from other designers that don't have a lot of accommodation for the depth of the gusset, enough depth to accommodate your sewing machine feet, then you need to adapt the pattern, and this method I've just explained is a really good way to do that. So as always, I want you to follow along at Leatherwork School on Instagram. You can also subscribe down below to my channel here to get updates as I release new videos. And you can also send an email to support@leatherworkschool.com. Thanks so much for joining me today.